How long?
6 months, maybe 8. I will send money every month, I promise you that.
Emeka.
In the land where red earth meets the sky, where the cocoyam grows wide and the harmattan whispers through the raffia palms, there was a village called Umunna. It was not the largest village, nor the richest, but it was the kind of place where nothing was ever truly hidden, where the morning market knew your secrets before your own tongue could speak them, and where the elders under the ukwa tree had watched enough sunrises to know exactly how every story ends. It was in this village that Adaeze was born, and it was in this village that she would become something the people of Umunna would talk about long after her grandchildren were grown. She had come into this world with a strength that seemed too large for one woman to carry. Her mother, they said, had laughed through her own labor pains. And Adaeze had entered the world without crying, eyes open, already looking around as though she were taking stock of everything she had inherited. Even the midwife had shaken her head and whispered, "This one did not come here to be weak." Emeka had been handsome in those early days, not handsome in the way of the idle men who sat at the palm wine bar all afternoon, handsome in the purposeful way, the way a man looks when he still has fire in his chest and a plan in his hands. He had courted Adaeze with persistence and a smile that could soften even a father's suspicion.
I'm so fond of you.
He had promised yams and a zinc roof. He had promised to make her proud. And for the first 2 years, he had not been entirely wrong. They farmed together. They ate together. They built a small compound with a swept mud floor and a single mango tree in the yard that the children would later climb. Adaeze was happy the way simple people are truly happy, not with excess, but with enough. Then the city whispered his name. It started with a cousin who returned from Lagos wearing leather shoes and a watch that caught the sun. Then came stories of men from Umunna who had gone away and come back with generators, motorcycles, cement blocks. Emeka began to listen to these stories the way a hungry man listens to the smell of soup, with his whole body leaning in the direction of the scent. He spoke to Adaeze about it one night, in the dark.
Adaeze, I have been thinking. There is something I need to tell you.
You know Obina, my cousin who came back from Lagos last harmattan?
With the generator, the motorcycle. Adaeze, the city is full of opportunity. I have a contact there.
How long?
6 months, maybe 8. I will send money every month, I promise you that.
Emeka.
I looked at her husband's face, the excitement there, the certainty. And she had made a calculation only a wife who truly knows a man can make. She had understood in that quiet moment that Emeka was already gone, that the conversation was not a request but an announcement, that she was being left. She had said only one thing. She had said, "Go."
Go, but remember where your roots are buried.
I will. I promise.
Adaeze carried everything. The first month, letters came. Then money, small but something. Then the letters slowed. Then the money slowed. Then both stopped arriving with the regularity of rain. But Adaeze did not slow. She rose before the sun each day. The sky still the color of ash. The roosters not yet awake. And she went to the farm. She planted cassava, tended the cocoyam, harvested what she could. She sold at the village market with the baby tied to her back and a toddler holding the hem of her wrapper. She bargained sharply. She never begged. When the rains came too hard and washed away the south field, she did not weep for long. She replanted within the week. When Chidi fell sick with malaria and the medicine cost more than she had, she sold her good earrings, the gold ones.
Mama, those are Grandma's earrings.
I know what they are, Chidi. Your brother needs medicine. That is what matters today. Everything else can be replaced. You cannot replace Kelechi.
Adaeze.
Mama Nena, the eldest woman in Umunna, who sat under the pawpaw tree at her gate every morning, watched with eyes that missed nothing. Some people pitied Adaeze. Some people whispered that she should go to her family and leave the empty marriage behind. A few men, the shameless kind, came to her compound with soft words and softer intentions. She sent every one of them away with a look so cold it could cure fever. She was not waiting for Emeka out of weakness. She was waiting out of a stubborn kind of faith. The kind that has no proof, but holds anyway. The way a tree holds the earth, even when the flood comes. 7 years passed this way. 7 planting seasons. 7 harmattan seasons. 4 children grown taller, stronger, better spoken than any other children in the village, because Adaeze had refused to let hardship become their education. Chidi was first in his class. Ioge could read before any of her mates. Kelechi made everyone laugh, and little Amara, born the year Emeka's letters finally stopped completely, had never met her father and did not yet know to miss him. Adaeze had built something in those 7 years. Not the zinc roof Emeka had promised, not the cement ceiling, but something more solid than any building a reputation, a standing. When any family in Umunna needed a strong pair of hands, they called Adaeze. When the women's cooperative needed someone to count the money and keep it honest, they called Adaeze. When a young bride was frightened and needed counsel, she was sent to Adaeze's compound. The village had quietly made her their own. The day Emeka returned. He arrived on a Saturday, the market day, when the whole village was gathered, which was either terrible timing or a deliberate choice, depending on how generously you read a man. He came in a hired kiki, the tricycle decorated with stickers that said, "Hustle hard and God's time." He was dressed in a way that was meant to look successful. Fresh agbada in sky blue, a gold-colored chain, shoes that had never touched farm soil. He carried a bag in each hand, and behind him, stepping out of the keke with the careful movements of someone who did not want to dirty her heels, was a woman no one in Umunna had ever seen. She was young. She was wearing a tight dress the color of fresh pepper. She had a long weave that the breeze was playing with. She looked around at the village, at the red earth, the open gutters, the women in wrappers, in the children chasing chickens, with the expression of someone who had been promised something different. The market went quiet, the way a bird goes quiet when it sees a snake. Emeka walked through the silence with the confidence of a man who had rehearsed this moment and was slightly surprised that the crowd was not cheering. He greeted people by name, slapping backs, wide smiling, and the people greeted him back because that is the way of the village, where courtesy is not the same as approval. He walked to his compound, to Adaeze's compound, to the compound that she had maintained, repaired, repainted, and filled with children and dignity while he had been away. He knocked at the gate as though he were a visitor. Adaeze opened it. She stood in the doorway with flour on her hands from the morning's work. Her afro, pinned with a single golden clip, Amara on her hip, and the composure of a woman who had already lived through the worst this moment could offer. She looked at her husband. She looked at the woman behind him. She looked back at Emeka. She did not shout. She did not cry. She did not slam the gate.
She looked at her husband.
She simply asked him, quietly in Igbo, if he had eaten. It was the most devastating thing she could have said, and every woman in earshot understood exactly why. The unraveling Emeka's return brought noise and disruption into a compound that had run on quiet discipline for 7 years. Chisom, the new wife, did not cook, did not farm, did not greet the elders with the correct bowing of the head. She sat inside and complained about the heat. She asked Emeka for money for things the village had never heard anyone request before. Creams, phone data, shoes she did not need. Emeka, for his part, had come back not with riches, but with debts. debts he had concealed behind the new agbada and the hired keke. The bags he had carried so grandly through the market contained mostly clothes. His business in the city had not worked. His connections had faded. He had come home because he had run out of places to go. And now he was in Adaeze's compound, eating the food from Adaeze's farm, sleeping under the roof that Adaeze had repaired. And he had brought someone else to do it with him. The village council of elders summoned him within the week. This was not unusual. It was custom. When a man returns, the elders receive him. When he returns with a second wife, the matter of bride price, I consent, and family standing must be discussed. Emeka came to the meeting in his agbada. Adaeze came in her wrapper, with her 4 children seated behind her like a wall. The eldest among the council, Papa Ogbu, a man so old his eyebrows had turned silver, spoke first. He did not ask Emeka about his business. He did not ask about the city. He asked only this: while you were away, who fed your children? Emeka opened his mouth, and Chidi, 12 years old, seated behind his mother, looked at his father for a long quiet moment, and then looked away. That look. That is what the village would talk about for years. A 12-year-old boy who had watched his mother carry everything, who had woken at 5 in the morning to help on the farm before school, who had gone without new sandals so his sister could have school fees, who had held his mother's hand in the dark when the kerosene ran out. That boy had looked at his father and found nothing worth looking at. The elders ruled that Emeka must provide a full accounting of the 7 years. They ruled that Adaeze was owed, not just in money, but in recognition. They ruled that Chisom must be properly introduced to the family, with the correct procedures, and that if Emeka could not meet the standards of a husband to 1 wife, he had no business with 2. Emeka argued. He was still the head of the household, he said. This was Africa, not London. A man had rights. Mama Nena, who had been silent all this time, raised 1 hand. The compound went so quiet you could hear the gecko on the wall blink. She said, "A man who abandons a fire and returns 7 years later to warm himself by it did not tend that fire. He is a guest in his own house, and guests do not give orders." No one spoke after that. The turning of the earth Chisom left before the month was out. There was no drama in it, just the quiet deflation of a woman who had been sold a story that turned out to have no foundation. She packed her bags on a Tuesday morning, called a keke, and did not look at anyone as she left. Perhaps she had known. From the moment she stepped into that compound and saw Adaeze standing in the doorway, calm and flower-handed and entirely unbothered, that she had walked into the wrong story. Emeka, without the city shine and without the new wife and without the pretense of success, became something smaller and more honest in the weeks that followed. He tried in his fumbling way to be present. He went to the farm, awkwardly at first, his hands no longer knowing the rhythm of the hoe. He tried to talk to his children, who received him with varying degrees of wariness. Chidi remained distant. Oge watched him with ancient eyes. Kelechi, being 6, forgave him fastest. Amara did not know what forgiveness meant yet, but she let him carry her, and that was its own kind of mercy. Adaeze watched all of this without comment. She cooked for him. She did not welcome him back with warmth, but she did not punish him with coldness either. She was simply herself, present, functioning, the axis the household turned around as it had always been. And Emeka slowly began to understand what he had come home to. Not a woman he had conquered, not a woman he had rescued, a woman who had built a life in his absence, a whole, full, derooted life, and had simply allowed him to return to the edge of it. If he wanted the center, he would have to earn it. Not with agbada, not with a hired keki, with presence, with work, with the slow, unglamorous business of being there every day, the way she had been. What the village remembered. Years later, when the children of Umunna grew up and had their own children, they would tell the story around the fire, not as a story of shame or defeat, but as a story about what holds. They would say, in the year of Adaeze, the village learned that a tree does not grow strong in the good weather. It grows strong in the storm. Every wind that tries to break it only drives the roots deeper. They would say, Adaeze did not win because she fought. She won because she stayed. Not out of weakness, not out of fear, but because she knew that this land, this soil, this compound, these children, this name, these were hers. And no absence, however long, could take what is truly rooted. And sometimes, when the market women gossiped about difficult husbands and long absences, one of them would say, remember Adaeze of Umunna. And the conversation would shift, because everyone remembered Adaeze of Umunna. And everyone remembered what she had said to her returning husband, not in anger, not in triumph, just in the quiet, devastating grace of a woman who had kept the fire burning so long she had become the fire. She had asked him, did you eat? And in those 3 words was everything. Every early morning, every sold earring, every sleepless night, every healed sickness, every school fee, every silent prayer. Every year of his absence folded into the ordinary hospitality of a woman who had refused to stop being home.